Hello, and thank you for joining us this afternoon. I'm Patrick O'Riordan, the Director of the Department of Building Inspection. I want to thank all of you for taking the time out of your day to ask questions, share your perspective, and offer any advice on how we can improve. Hearing from you is a critical part of our improvement efforts, and we are fortunate to have you as partners. Now, we have several important updates to share today from several city departments, including DBI. DBI Director for Permit Services, Neville Pereira, is going to walk you through the new digital intake process for in-house review projects. Then Acting DBI Deputy Director for Inspection Services, Matt Green, is going to discuss a new mandatory special inspections conflict of interest attestation requirement. That's a lot. And DBI Technical Services Division Manager Janie Chan is going to give you a rundown on the new emergency escape and rescue openings guidelines. After that, we'll open up the floor to general questions and comments so we can hear from you directly about what's working and what we can improve on and how we can better serve you and the city. Thank you, and with that, I'll turn it over to DBI Communications Director Patrick Hannon, who's facilitating today's program. Thank you, Patrick.
One moment while we handle some technical difficulties.
I can't. I mean, I have all the slides and everything here. You want to go for mine? Neville.
Yeah, do you want to share my screen? I can share my screen.
I have the slide.
I have my own slides. I can.
I want sound.
Hey, Neville, why don't you go ahead and present your slides?
Sure. Are you seeing that, Kelly?
Yes.
Okay. And I'm just, you don't need to see me right now. So good afternoon, everybody. Actually, let me. You can't see me. I'm just gonna go ahead and talk. So for some reason I'm not able to turn my screen on. Anyway, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Neville Pereira, Deputy Director here at Permit Services, DBI. Here to talk to you about a new in-house project review digital intake process. As some of you have experienced, we have a new portal that's on our website, on DBI's website. And so we're going to be talking about that today. The overview of my presentation is why are we doing this? Why now? What are the benefits of it? A little idea about the process that happens from the moment you submit online, and how that process materializes behind the scenes. What are some of the reasons that you may get a rejection letter once you've submitted? And then lastly, deal with some frequently asked questions. Okay, so why now? Primarily because of customer demand. What we heard, either from customers directly or through the state who heard from customers, it was apparent that there was a need for more upfront guidance on how to submit more complete projects to facilitate the review. The state had heard a little bit of both, that some cities were struggling with incomplete applications. Some customers were complaining perhaps that, halfway through or a little bit through the process, maybe at the end of the process, they were hit with some information that would have been best presented up front. And so the other thing is that with this process, we have more predictable timelines, because a complete submittal from the onset allows us to do a complete review the first time around. And so as we get more complete projects, we can more accurately predict the timelines to be able to funnel these reviews through. And also, as you may know, with the next bullet here, state legislation has also imposed some time thresholds on the regulatory agencies to give you more predictable timelines as well. And then lastly, on this first bullet point, fewer last minute surprises. We want to prepare you, our customer, as best as possible right from the beginning, which is the reason for a lot of the front loading of this guidance on our website, as well as through the intake process. Many of you also know that AB 2234 initially started with these time thresholds for housing projects, and then AB 1114 made it applicable here in San Francisco, and that's what we're now working with. And then lastly, it's frankly, it's about time. It's about time that the city and county of San Francisco got on board with this idea of providing as much information up front, giving you a digital portal to upload your information from the comfort of your own offices, your own workspaces, and also being able to communicate well with us. That's the one big enhancement that's very notable here. There's transparency into that intake process. There's communication back and forth throughout that intake process. Okay, the next slide here. The benefits is an enhanced website information. As I said, the city agencies that are involved with development review spent the last few months of the year really combing through their process and documenting the need for what they want to see on a set of plans, what supplemental information they need as part of their review. And then our director of communications here, together with the permit center, look to collect all that information, put it on our website. And if you go to our DBI website, you can see the step-by-step process with hyperlinks to documentation that's required all along the process. So even some of you that are really familiar with the process, you have, and know what documents are needed, they're right here for you on our website. Those who are less familiar, again, for you. And then with our next, we've got an enhanced document web page, or a couple of web pages. So again, those of you that are familiar with the process can go directly to the forms that you know and love, and retrieve them, as opposed to going through that step-by-step process. So we've really catered for the beginner that's submitting here at DBI in San Francisco, and for the experts that are used to just going to the forms and then uploading them. Right. So those are some of the benefits there. Clearly, the best part of this is being able to submit your electronic documents online through this single online portal. As I spoke about last time, we have completely migrated our in-house operations to 100% digital intake. So there's no more paper submittals to DBI for in-house review projects. And then, as a result of this online submittal portal, we are also consolidating other portals that are out scattered, through our website. Some of you know about the in-house review portal for ADUs specifically. There's another portal for affordable housing projects, and yada yada. You just keep, there's a couple of other avenues. Prop H, we're looking at bringing those in through here as well when it needs in-house review. So one door in it makes it simpler for our customers to deal with. And then we have the completeness confirmation. There's a checklist of items that's available to you, the public. This is no secret. We don't want to keep this internal only. We publish this on our website so you can make sure that you have all of these as part of your package as it pertains to your project. So this checklist is available on our website. You can use this. In fact, I think it's part of the requirement that you go and submit this checklist just to validate that you have met all these requirements, and then you attest to that on the submittal when you hit submit on the web portal. And then each one of our internal review agencies will use this checklist just to make sure you have a complete list of supporting documents to the plans so that they can do a complete review for you. And then there are the timelines, right? The state has issued us a 15-day completeness review timeline to be able to make sure that the submittal is complete for all review, not just DBI. It's for the planning department, DPW, the health department, fire department, and so on and so forth. Once you have cleared the completeness, you will then go into our regular plan review submittal. And these guidelines that are here are only for housing projects. It's 30 business days for a complete review from all city agencies, 30 business days for 25 units or less, or 60 business days for 26 units or more. All other projects outside of housing, we have our normal review thresholds that are there. And again, this is a time where the city has come together, as a city family, as a one city operation for building permitting, and really looking to give you reliable and predictable timelines for your projects. So this is what's going on behind the scenes. A lot going on here, so I'll really try to make it simple. Before you submit your plans to the online portal, you're required to get a planning approval of some sort, either through a planning approval letter or some sort of approval from planning to be able to submit. You then you fill out your application. You will then upload all your documents, including a PDF of your application, into the portal, and a decision is made whether this is a resubmission. If it is a resubmission, it'll go straight into the plan review queue. If it's a new submittal, it'll go into what we call the triage stage. That way, our internal staff will make sure that, first of all, it's not a duplicate submittal, because you could have potentially an owner submitting it and not knowing that the architect or permit runner is submitting it as well. So there's a potential for duplicate submittal. Could be a complication with the address. We've had issues with people not submitting with the application with their plans, or vice versa. There's no set of plans with the application, so there's missing documentation up front. This early stage is where we can just look at the big rocks, right, that are missing in your application, and you will get a rejection letter right away. One other thing to let you know, when you hit submit on the online portal, you will get a confirmation email back immediately from our system notifying you that we have received your application, and it'll be sometime before you get confirmation that you're going through to the completeness review. So you get immediate feedback. Once you pass this stage, and you don't have any of the reasons to reject you at this stage, an application number is created at this stage, and you get confirmation now that you've passed that stage, and with an application now to refer to, which you can then start to track on the online portal on the DBI website. So if you do have duplicates or any problems, you will go back and have to resubmit again. If you're okay, then you will go into this stage, what we call the completeness check. Now, a lot of you are concerned about the 15 days, right? Because this is just on intake, and already the city's racking up 15 days. The state allows us to do 15 days. However, there's somewhat of agreement with the city to consolidate that to as little time as possible. Many of you know that DBI has been doing this completeness check on a regular basis between 2 and 5 days. It just happens now we've set it out to all departments at the same time, and those departments, we're in the early stages of this process. Those departments, like DBI was at the beginning, have to get used to the process, have to start to hone their resources. So currently, whereas we are closer to the 15 days, we're rapidly shrinking that down. And like I say, the expectation is we get closer to the 2 to 5 day response time, relatively quickly here. All departments get to review the digital set or the digital package that you have submitted up front. Here, they can choose to opt out of the review. You can imagine if it's an internal tenant improvement for an office space, you can have DPW opt out, planning maybe opting out, the health department opting out. If they do opt in, there's an opportunity then for them to review whatever documents they need to do a complete review. Again, this is a very quick cursory review. We're not checking plans at this point. I mean, we're not checking for plan check corrections. We're just checking for the rough documentation. So it should be fairly quick at this stage. And then based on the decisions that were made here, you, the applicant, will either get an approval letter saying that you pass completeness and that you're in line for the full plan review, or you'll get a letter of incomplete application, in which case it'll tell you specifically, based on those checklists that I talked about, which items on the checklist that you don't meet. And so you get it in writing, the items that you're missing, and then you'll have an opportunity again to resubmit, and it'll go through until you eventually get through the plan check line. And again, this is a process that's no different from it is today for housing. There's a typo in here. This is not a completeness check. This is a full plan check for housing only. We have those 30 business days and 60-day business day limitations depending on the unit numbers, and the plan check process goes on until you eventually get all agencies approved that are applicable to your project, and then we issue the permit. Okay. Potential reasons why you may get a rejection at that completeness check level. Number one, I talked about duplicate submissions, missing or incomplete application. You have a wrong address. Our staff will go through the application, match up the address on the application with the plans and the documents, make sure they all pertain to the same project. And basically, the plan reviewers will also match the scope of work to, say, the structural calcs. Make sure you have the structural calcs for that particular project, and so on and so forth. If there's missing plans or portion of the plans that are missing or supporting documentation, that's a reason to be rejected as well. If you're submitting an addendum or a series of addenda, it's important that you submit your addenda form with this application, because the staff need to know which addenda you're submitting here and where that it, and they want to see the addenda schedule submitted right there and then. Some people may say, well, hey, you guys, you kind of have that if you're in your files, but understand this work group that looks at this preliminary information it doesn't immediately have access to those files. And so, whereas the department may have those, they're stored in a different location. So it really behooves you to provide that documentation with this for now. Then this is the other part of it. You need a planning review approval prior to submission. Remember that item I showed you here, that you do need planning approval before you submit. And if you don't have that, that may be an issue too. If you are resubmitting for a completeness, you got you got an incomplete letter from us, and you're just resubmitting and letting us know that you've now submitted all the missing information. If you don't have a response letter, or if you haven't told us, you haven't shown overtly that you cleared those items, that may be a reason for rejection or to slow you down. And then lastly, if the application does not have does not address an active notice of violation, as you know, our process, one of the early stages is that our inspection staff engage, and if there's a notice of violation on the property and this project doesn't address that notice of violation, that may also be a reason to be rejected at this stage. Okay, so let's go into some frequently asked questions. I got a couple of slides here. We'll go quickly through it. What are the maximum number of files that I can submit, and what's the file size? You can submit up to 10 files in with your application package. So if you have 15 files, just consolidate some of those PDFs into other PDFs and then find a way to let us know that. And the maximum file size per file currently is a 250 megabytes. We're looking at raising this number up so you can submit bigger files. If you do have a larger file size than 250 megabytes, there's an email address that you can request to send your file through another method. And so that's the way to submit your request for a larger file. This information is on the website as well, by the way. What if I have questions on how to submit multiple documents for my application? Talk to the Permit Center at sfplanreview.sfgov.org. They'll walk you through the process there. All right. If my project did not qualify for OTC, over the counter, can I use the online portal to convert my my OTC paper project to an in-house Form 3? Yes, absolutely. That's what we're here to do. And many of you already do this. You know that you can get a quick review from the planning department, and either building or fire or some other department requires you to take it in. So many of you will avail of the quick review in paper OTC, and then your requirement is to scan those original documents. So all of your stamps and signatures on your plans and on your application, we're asking you to scan those original documents as cleanly as possible. We want the documents to be of good contrast, without any significant wrinkles, so everything's legible for us. And then upload that so that you don't have to go through the process again. Follow the in-house process that is outlined on the website and the information I just gave you. Submit the original scanned documents, because if you give us a new set of plans, a new PDF, without those stamps, you will go through the entire process and we will not necessarily know. Actually, even if we know that you got an approval, we'll still want those stamps. And so we'll have to send you through those departments again. So please, please, please scan the original paper documents and do us a favor, not having to review it again. Can I convert in midstream? So you have a current paper projects right now that's being stored here at DBI. Can I convert that? Absolutely. In fact, we will be contacting you systematically over the next coming months to ask you if you want to convert your project over to EPR. So we'll allow you to take possession of your paper application here make a clean scan of those original documents and then give us back that the scanned version so that we can put you back in line where you left off and have everything go on in parallel fashion as opposed to in serial fashion as it does with paper. Okay, again, scan the original documents. Do not give us a new scan unless you have some changes that you want to make, in which case you will go through all the review stations again, and as if you had revised your plans, and all review stations get to look at it again. So there's a benefit of keeping those original drawings, keeping the project the same, but by the same token, we don't want to hamstring you. We're doing a project that you want to modify somewhat. Just recognize the repercussions. I think it makes sense to you what we're talking about there. Can I use the online portal to submit addenda to an approved site permit? Absolutely. That again, what we're doing here is consolidating our different portals down to a single portal, and so the addenda need to come in that way. When you're submitting on the website, it'll ask you for a reference site permit number. Please make sure you enter the appropriate site permit number, and make sure you upload the addenda form / schedule. These are really critical because I tell you, in the last couple of weeks, we got in a few submittals that are missing this information, and it just causes us an incredible amount of work on our end. And we would rather facilitate projects rather than get bogged down in stuff. Be sure you clearly identify the addendum number that you are submitting during this process as well, or if you're submitting multiple addenda, make sure you let us know. What does it mean if I receive an email confirmation after submitting the application through the online portal? If you did not receive an email confirmation, so you hit submit on the online portal and you don't get that email that I talked about, that we received your documents, we received your applicant, it could mean that you submitted to DBI an unsubscribe request, and we have unsubscribed you from our mailing list, which we use, or it's a filter that allows us to send emails to that email address. If you send us an unsubscribe notification, the chances are that you will not receive our email notices. If you want to get back on, contact sfplanreview.gov. Permit Center will resubscribe you to our notifications. Okay, that's my presentation. Hand it back to Patrick.
Thanks, Neville, and thank you guys. I'm Patrick Hannon, the Communications Director for the Department of Building Inspection. Kelly, do we have anybody who has called in or has a question? We'll open up the questions on this topic before we move on to our next presentation.
Yes. Hello, everyone. We're now opening it up to questions. I'll be moderating the Q&A sessions today. If you would like to ask a question, please dial #3 to raise your hand, and you will wait until it's your turn to speak. Once it's your turn, you'll hear a message from the phone system that will say your line has been unmuted, and that signals it's your time to ask. And please be sure to state your name and organization if you're representing one. And if at any time you want to lower your hand, press #3 again.
Kelly, I just noticed that Gus has his hand up. If you want to take that before.
Yeah, thank you, Neville. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Great. I just want to add one more on when not to use the form. We're starting to see customers that are submitting revisions for projects that are currently in a Bluebeam session. There's a different process for that. And currently the process is to email dbi.epr@sfgov.org with your revisions. So do not use this new intake portal for projects that are in review in Bluebeam, in a Bluebeam session, and you're asked to submit revisions. Because that's not, the portal's not meant for that right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Gus.
Great. Thanks for sharing, Gus. All right, I see some hands up. David Penn, it's your turn to go.
Hi, David. We can't hear you if you're talking.
Okay, I'll go to the next name on the list and I'll circle back to you, David. Henry, it's your turn.
Okay, Henry, we're having problems hearing you as well if you are speaking.
Irving, I just unmuted you. Please speak when you're ready.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Awesome.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you for everything. This has been very informative. A little nerve-wracking when we hear about the scanning because there's a cost associated with that. But my two key questions here are that checklist that is looked at for completeness, is that something that's also available for us as a guideline so that we make sure that we're checking it off as we're going and you have everything you need?
It is. It's on our website,
Okay.
as far as I know. And what I'll do is I'll quickly look it up. As if you have any other questions, I can show you where.
Sure. The other one is just very brief. Is this? There's a lot of valuable information you provided today, and I'm sure with those that follow. I'm just wondering, is this webinar being recorded and available for us to, watch later on and refresh our memories?
Yes, the webinar is being recorded. And, it's on our public advisory forum page for this, or will be on the public advisory forum page for this meeting. So if you just follow the link from the email that we sent out,
Mhm.
very bottom, you'll be able to watch it again. It should be up tomorrow.
Great. Thank you very much, Patrick. I appreciate that.
Great. Thank you, Irving. All right, next in line is John Trevor. John, feel free to ask us a question when you're ready.
Are you there?
We can hear you.
Oh, awesome. So we submitted a project converting from a Form A to a Form 3. We got the scan done and submitted through the portal 2 weeks ago. We noticed that on PTS, we got the updates from mechanical and building for pre-screening. Like we went on PTS and we saw their comments there, but we didn't see any updates for DPW or fire. We know that DPW had issued comments because we reached out to them, and I was wondering who was handling the PTS updates for fire and DPW.
Amanda, can you hand that off?
Of course, I'd be happy to jump in. The online portal is feeding a new tool in the back end that is compiling completeness comments from 7 different departments in parallel. So in addition to the DBI stations like mechanical and electrical and structural that are doing reviews, we're also compiling all the feedback from fire, public health, public works, and planning, and in some cases OCII. And so that rich detail exists in our system and comes to you in the form of a completeness letter within 15 business days. Very, very detailed feedback beyond what really can fit in PTS today. So we're representing that progress in PTS as a row that's updated by the Permit Center, and it says Interagency Completeness Review. And so that will show you when the review has started and ended. The end date will coincide with you getting your letter with a multi-page checklist showing exactly what is complete, what's incomplete, and what's not applicable. And if something is incomplete, you'll have guidance in the comments of how to make sure that your submission is complete next time. The goal is to give you really, really complete guidance in one single place. Does that answer your question?
Understood. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, John. Next is John Trevor.
Sorry, I forgot to lower my hand. He's answering my question.
Oh, got it. Okay, next we have Maria Velasquez. Maria, looks like we can't hear you. Okay, I'll circle back with you in a moment. Next is David Penn.
Can you hear me? Is David?
Yes.
Yes.
Fantastic. Thank you. So I guess Neville, my primary concern here is the 15 days being added on. And I was one of the first, I think, to submit an application with this new process. So I understand that, the timeline that I experienced might not be representative once the new process gets ironed out and, hurdles get lowered and speed bumps smoothed out. But my concern is that that additional time is being added to the kind of train tracks of permitting for all permits, where I understand you've got the AB 1114 requirement for housing projects, but for all other permits, the additional stop on the station is being added. That's ultimately, just not in line with sort of, standards for efficiency. Just the more touches you have, the longer it's going to take. And for, some of these agencies, I mean, I'm just curious, with PUC and DPW, there's a fine line between, plan review and completeness check. Sometimes you really have to get into a project before you can know, in some cases, whether a certain form is going to be required. So that's essentially is my concern. And I'm wondering if, if this process could be limited to housing development projects for purposes of the city and county of San Francisco's compliance with state requirements. It would be great if, if the process can be completed in your aspirational time frame of 3 to 5 days, which would get us back to where we were with the just DBI only preliminary plan review. But that my experience was 16 days from filing to getting an invoice from CPB, and there was about 8 days in between my completeness review letter and the CPB invoice. So just, I know there's a lot of different people involved here, and that particular permit application only required DBI. There was no PUC, no SFFD, no DPW. It's a single family home renovation. So it was, pretty straightforward.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, David. Thank you for the question. And I may call on Gus a little bit for this. I just want to underscore the fact that we are early in the process, right? We're only 3 weeks in. This was a very heavy lift for the permit center to get implemented between the time the legislation passed and the beginning of the year. So they worked extremely hard to get us to where it's at, not only in the programming of the back end system, but also to prepare all city agencies. You can imagine that, right? Prepare all city agencies to be able to do what DBI has been doing fairly effectively for the last year and a half. So, pardon our dust. We're still in a kind of construction site, so to speak. We, as we stand this up, we are getting better. I recognize that your project, you said 16 days or so. It will get better. I promise you. As each department looks at or learns lessons from the last week, it's unfortunate. It's just like, when you're buying the new model of the new car, some people are going to get burned on some things that don't quite work. Not that that's happening here, but it is basically a work in progress. And Gus, if you can follow up on that.
Real quick, actually, Mr. Perea, if I can just jump in too, I just wanted to quickly point out the specifics of addenda review and completeness check for that. While your specific example of an addenda form letter makes sense, that's a completeness check that any clerk is going to do at intake.
And we do.
A complete multi-agency completeness review on an addenda seems to not really make sense, because the site permit would have kind of covered all of those all of
Yeah,
those requirements.
forgive me for not knowing that was an addendum that you were referring to, but
No,
yes,
no,
let me address the addenda process and or fire only permits, or things that only need one or a few agencies. So if you're submitting a structural addenda, for example, clearly we don't have to go through PUC, public health, and all that. We're working it out so that our DBI initial review makes that decision within a matter of a day or so, and automatically screens out the other departments from review. So again, this is a program that was created very quickly, and we are honing its capabilities down right now. And we do recognize there are certain things that just need to go straight to the fire department, right? Fire only permit needs to go to DBI and fire, and we are not stringing you through every department on those reviews. So Gus, did you have anything to add? Or if not,
Yeah, thanks, Neville. Yeah, I mean, definitely, the benefits of this, the upfront information, what is required from all permitting departments to submit a successful in-house application. David, I know your team, you have a lot of knowledge on what's required, but definitely this is for the mass, right? We want to provide upfront information so that everyone knows exactly what's required to submit a project successfully. Also, the fact that you are in maybe not so much the addendum, but for the full permits, a completeness application review from all departments, right? So if there isn't anything missing, a required document that's missing during plan review that could delay. So it's, we're seeing it as overall time savings, maybe slower up front, especially right now as we're going through this learning curve, as Neville mentioned. It's not just training a new system for one department. It's training a new system for staff for 6 departments, as well as training customers. I mean, from what we're seeing right now, because that's also the great thing about this, is the transparency and visibility of all the in-house applications that are coming in, a quality check, quality control that I can assure you is happening every day with meetings with departments to ensure that we're adding the right comments, sending out letters that make sense to the customer when they receive it, if it's an incomplete application. I would say my best advice for customers: take your time, review the website for the in-house, review the steps. I know a lot of applicants are going on auto mode, just upload, fill out, upload. But take your time, because these questions that we're asking are important. Because when we get your response, that way it's less time for the DBI permit technicians and for staff to know exactly what you're looking for, what you're submitting. If you kind of barrel through it, if you don't upload your documents correctly or upload all your documents, then yeah, you're going to see some delays in the application review. So we don't want that. So please, my best advice for everyone in this new process is to take a moment, make sure your application is complete, make sure you've identified it correctly. If it's addendum to a site, include the site, the original site building application number, include what addenda number it is, include the addenda schedule. I mean, it's all of that, right? Just to ensure that there aren't any additional delays as we onboard in this new process. As Neville mentioned, it's definitely only going to get better. Thank you.
Thanks, Gus. Kelly, next caller.
Yep. Thanks, David, for your question. Next caller is Mahmood.
With Ruben, Junius, and Rose. I just have a couple of questions here. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Oh, great. Awesome. I have a question about this new tier system and the updates not being posted in PTS or on your website. Is there some way? I know I can email the clerks at DBI, but obviously they have other things to do. Is there any way that you guys are going to update the permit tracking system so the applicant, as myself, can know which tier it's assigned to?
I can answer that. So the tier system is an internal mechanism that we use to determine whether it's the level of effort associated with that project. If you can look at, you know, a method of assigning projects, I can go to 5 plan checkers and give 5 projects each. I'm not going to get the same response because one of the plan checkers has several large ones, a couple of small ones, and so it's an internal mechanism we use to gauge the level of effort, so that when we assign work for the week, we give a true representation of the body of work for that week. This information is, quite frankly, just for internal purposes. It shouldn't affect the applicant at all. You just know that your plan's getting to the most available plan checker as quickly as possible. It's an internal mechanism that really has no need to be visible to a public.
But is there a way, I mean, I guess, you know, in the past, I've just emailed the clerk and they've told me, or I've asked one of the, you know, QC plan checkers this. So, yeah, that's the whole reason, you know, knowing I have this much time, or you guys have, you know, so much time to get to my project based on what tier it is, like, it'll be a week for, yeah.
Yeah. So, and that's, I see where you're going, but that doesn't tell you how much time you have. We internally, we have some targets for where we want to go, but I'll tell you what I'm having to deal with right now. And I'll just be straight with everybody here. Tier 1 is usually an over-the-counter, something that takes less than an hour. Tier 2, anything between an hour and 4 hours, a body of work that takes between 1 and 4 hours. Tier 3, between 4 and 8 hours. Anything above 8 hours is a tier 4, right? So that allows us to categorize the work. And then there's this other body of work that is priority work, priority projects, things like mayor's office housing directives, that 100% affordable ADU projects, Prop H projects. These take precedence over everything. So if you can imagine, Mahmoud, I go through a week or two where there's a slug of priority projects. Everything else get pushed down to what available hours they can be. So if I publish information about a tier and the threshold that we internally try to keep, but we can't meet possibly just because of the influx during that week of assignments and whatever. You see the dilemma there. It's publishing a statistic out or a category out to our customers that is not it's not representative of anything. We do our best internally at DBI. And again, this tier system is a DBI only system. It doesn't apply to any of the other departments. It has very little value, honestly, for the
Understood. I get, you know, I just ask because I get a lot of questions from clients about this system. That's the reason.
The last thing I'd like to say, Mahmoud, you can appreciate, hopefully you can appreciate our perspective. If a tier assignment was, was assigned at the beginning and you had the, what tends to happen is like, well, wait a minute, I shouldn't be assigned a tier 3. It's definitely a tier 2. We don't want to get into those this is an internal assessment of our senior engineers. And again, it's our effort at DBI just to keep it as objective and as clear as possible for our staff.
Okay, so that kind of goes into my second part of that question. How can we appeal? Let's say I want to appeal someone telling me it's a tier 2 when I feel it's a tier 1. What is the process?
There is no I mean, you can come talk to me about it. So it's like going to Jimmy at the counter and saying, look, hey, Jimmy, you got to do this over the counter. And Jimmy is like, no, it doesn't, right? It just doesn't. It's one of those things. We have our staff to make that determination. They do it as objectively as possible based on the information provided. And you, as the applicant, don't really get to tell us how long. And it sounds kind of rude, right, from me telling you. You don't really get to tell us how long it takes for us to check it.
Oh, understood. I mean, I've always emailed you in the past. I'm just curious. I'm probably just going to keep bugging you about that.
That's fine. That's what I'm here for.
Yeah, I mean, I got a whole bunch of questions, and I'll try to be quick. When a project is intake for planning, but OTC for others. For example, we're submitting through this new portal. And in the past, when everything was done in paper, DBI had implemented some type of system where you would drop off your ID, pick up the plans, and then bring the plans back at the end of the day. In this new system where everything is done online, is there going to be a way that we can request for over-the-counter review for, let's say like a small deck in the rear where planning requires, notification and whatnot, but the scope is so small that a structural engineer at the city can review it in less than an hour? Is there a way of obtaining this electronic review over the counter, or are we just going to have to sit in the backlog for?
Neville, before you answer that, Mahmoud, I heard you say that you have a number of questions. We have some other callers. So after Neville answers this question, we're going to move on to the other callers, and you can circle back at the final Q&A at the end of the session for the remainder of your questions.
And I'm actually going to just turn that over to Liz Waddy, who just came on camera here. Liz, what happened?
Happy to answer that question. So just to reiterate, Mahmoud, I think your question was in-house for planning because we need to do notice of some sort, but it's OTC for DBI. So in that situation under the new system, before you even engage in a building permit process, you would just go directly to the planning department and you would submit your project application, your PRJ PDF to us at planning. We would take care of all the planning and review. So we would do CEQA, we would do neighborhood notification if it's still required after the constraints to reduction ordinance passed. It may not need notice anymore, but we would do all of that and we would issue you basically a PDF Word doc. That's your planning approval letter. Then once you have that planning approval letter, the next day you go down to DBI and just do a normal in-person hard copy OTC process. And so in the same way that you would do a normal OTC process, when you get routed over to planning, you would just present them the planning approval letter, and the planner at the counter would just sign off on that building a permit and say, per planning approval letter issued, blah, blah, blah date. And you would move on through the rest of the normal OTC process. So we've basically just pulled ourselves out of the OTC building permit process if if you need to do something more extensive with planning. And then you can loop back when you're ready.
Okay, yeah.
Thanks, Liz. All right. Next in line is John Trevor. John, you're up.
I have a question about the 15-day review. Once we have a completeness letter and get all the documents into the set and resubmit, do we have another 15-day review, or do we get credit for the first submittal?
No, yeah. So the the legislation is such that when you resubmit, the clock starts again. So unfortunately, it's another. But I don't want to get you hung up on the 15 days. The state allows us the 15 days. We're going the other way. We're going closer to the 2 to 5 days. So but it should be a pretty quick check, right? Amanda, you have something to add to that?
Oh, I would just say we got our first resubmittal in response to an incomplete project today, and it's already flown through most of the necessary reviews. People remember seeing it, and they're able to just come in and look for the specific things they're looking for. So yeah, we do have the 15 days, but I really hope for your sake and ours, we don't use them.
So thank you.
Great. Thank you, John. Next caller is Cassandra Meddling Davis. You were up.
Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Hello. So I have some simple questions. Is the Bluebeam system still being utilized for the way that we address plan check comments?
It is. I will tell you, there's a rapid movement here to accommodate a different methodology of using Bluebeam. We will use it internally as a means to mark up plans and your calculations or supporting documentation, but not include you in the Bluebeam session. Again, this is what's planned. It hasn't happened yet. And then just transact with you, the customers, via PDF and through this on-base portal, communications portal. So all you're doing from a customer perspective is feeding us PDFs. We're feeding you back PDFs, and you don't have to purchase Bluebeam anymore. Again, this is the concept. We're moving to that in that direction very quickly here.
But we already did purchase it. We all did. So, but
Okay.
Another question is, so if we have plan check comments like we were just talking about, how does that affect our 30-day limit? So say I get plan check comments from 2 different departments, does the clock stop until I return the revised documents?
So once we've gone through a plan review, this is not completeness check here. We're talking about plan review, right?
I'm talking about plan review.
Yeah. So once you've gone through a cycle of plan review, the clock stops as soon as we've turned it over to you. Once you resubmit it, the clock starts again. Again, this is just for housing projects, right? I just want to make sure you understand the clock is there for housing projects.
What about residential remodels with or without an ADU?
Right. So a housing project is defined as anything that creates 1 or more units. So if it's just residential remodel, you don't, those thresholds don't apply.
The 30-day thresholds don't apply?
Correct. Yeah. Again, so I can speak for DBI only. When you submit a recheck to DBI, we have an internal mandate that those rechecks have to be done in 10 working days. And I just heard last week, a few days ago, that about 81% of our projects are meeting those 10 working days. So we're doing pretty well. And over time, like I said, whatever we're doing that's working well, we'll propagate to the other departments, hopefully. Again, this is a resource issue, and I don't want to speak for the other departments. I can just speak for DBI.
Okay, but we still have a parallel plan check review for
Yes.
any project.
Correct.
Okay.
I want to underscore that as well. For those of you that are still working in the paper world and you have pipeline projects with us here in paper, I really encourage you to contact us at that email address I gave you before, PPC actually, to get your project converted over to EPR so that when you resubmit, you don't go desk to desk to desk, because that really is it's an old way of doing things. We want to do things more efficiently in parallel.
Okay.
Thanks, Neville. And thanks, Cassandra. We're going to take one more caller, and then we're going to move on to the next presentation. We'll save time at the end of the webinar for any additional comments and questions. Kelly, our last caller on this topic for the time being.
Henry, the floor is yours.
Yeah, hi. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, good. Thanks. Neville, you mentioned in the past about applications that are in intake and for internal review, that you can make an appointment then to respond to the comments in person. Is that happening? Number one. And then the other thing is, can one change from a Form 3 to a Form 8? If it turns out the project is not as large as what you thought it was or whatever, is that possible? So that one thing is, are we able to make appointments to do the plan check review, response to plan check comments in person? And the second thing is about possibility to go from a Form 3 to a Form 8.
Yeah. So the answer to the first question is yes. I would say rather than in person and interactive plan check, as some of you know, COVID is still rearing its head, and so that I want to say that you can definitely request an interactive plan check where you maybe share a screen with one of our plan reviewers. Certain plan reviewers will meet with you in person. They all know that. And they will all give you that within 10 working days. So yes, we do that. Second part of the question was, sorry.
Form 3 to Form 8.
Oh yeah. So we do so we don't do a conversion off that project. If you're able to convince your plan checker that it's an easier project, or you reduce the scope somehow, what we'll do internally is we'll take it from a tier 2 or a tier 3 down to a tier 1 if that's the case. We'll still check it up here on the 5th floor as opposed to move it down to the 2nd floor, but we will do it that week. Our tier 1s get assigned within a week here.
Okay, that should do it for now. Okay, thanks very much, Neville.
Okay.
Thanks, Neville, and thanks everyone for the questions. Like I said, we'll circle back at the end for any remaining questions. For now, we're going to move on to Matt Green, who's going to give a presentation on the new special inspections attestation requirement. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Matthew Green. I'm the acting Deputy Director for Inspection Services. And I'm going to be brief talking about a new requirement for when you're submitting your special inspection letters. Why are we doing this? The goal is to proactively prevent conflicts of interest. So starting February 5th, all special inspections reports and final affidavits that are submitted to inspection services, they'll have to have an attestation verifying, you're attesting that this is accurate and independent from the person who performed the construction work. We have very specific language that we'd like you to use. Next slide, please, Patrick. So the language is right under your signature and your engineer stamp. Please put, by signing this document, I am confirming that the information provided is objective, competent, and independent from the contractor responsible for the work being inspected. You can also get the text there at that link, SF.gov Resource 2024 Special Inspections Conflict of Interest Attestation. So it's important to note, starting February 5th, once you email in your special inspection affidavits or your field reports, if it doesn't have this attestation, we're going to send it back to you and ask you to update your letter. So that's it. It's pretty simple. Starts February 5th. I'm happy to take any questions about this. I've already received 2 questions, so I might as well address those immediately. This just applies to special inspections. It doesn't apply to structural observations. And the second question is, we are going to update our sample letter that you see on the website. So it'll specifically show you what we need. Other than that, I'm available for any questions.
Great. Thanks, Matt. We're opening it up to questions now. Same protocol as before, but for those who just joined us, if you have a question, dial #3 to raise your hand. And once it's your turn, you will hear a message that will say your line has been muted, and that's your chance. And please be sure to state your name and organization if you're representing one. Maria Velasquez, it's your turn to speak.
Oh, hi. I was having troubles earlier, and I think part of my question was already answered, but it stems from the EPR Q&A from December 14th regarding the blue beam, phasing out the blue beam, and I just want to make sure I understand it correctly. Are you going to be phasing it out where you are going to limit the project team from making markups in the session? Is that going to be phased out? That was my understanding from the video.
Yeah. Sorry, I don't have your name again on here.
I'm sorry, Maria Velasquez with Ruben, Junius, and Rose.
Right. So Maria, I don't want to speak out of turn. This is not my decision alone to make. It's an active discussion between DBI, the rest of the departments, and the permit center. There's definitely an evolution of electronic plan review that's happening today, and that is the goal to not have our customers require the software to engage in this back and forth. We also need to have tighter control on the review cycles as well. So I will limit my comments on that just to let you know that's the direction that we will probably be going.
So for minor corrections that can be handled through the Bluebeam session, that's no longer going to be available for the project teams?
We want to be consistent across the board. That's all I can say. And so to allow some people into a session and others not is not conducive for what we're trying to do.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Maria. Next in line is Nick.
Hello, Nick.
Hello?
Hi.
Hi.
Hi. Oh, sorry. Thanks. This is Nick with ARS. Just to follow up on that last point about the Bluebeam markups. just to be clear, that's a great transparent service the department offers now. Very efficient. Going to something that requires the permit applicant to file revisions, through a portal to the department could add weeks for just minor revisions. So the department should take note of that.
So do you want to hold those questions to the end, Patrick? And we can see if there's any questions about the actual special inspection attestation.
Oh.
Sorry, Nick, I don't mean to cut you off, but
Yeah, sorry. Okay.
Folks, are there any questions about the special inspections attestations? If so, please raise your hand. No?
yes, it was such a clear presentation. There's no questions. All right, thank you.
Can I ask another question?
If it's on the special inspections attestation, sure. If not, then let's hold it till the end. We have one more presentation to get through, and then we can circle back to this topic.
Okay, I'll put my hand down and put my hand up again. Thanks.
Henry, is your question on the special inspection?
Oops. Yes, it is. Sorry. I'm having a problem with this sound stuff. Anyway, Matt, Henry Kornilowicz, I have a project where I sent in a letter regarding a soft story required, work and inspection, all that sort of stuff. Anyway, so we sent a letter from an engineer saying, no, it's not a soft story building, and we should not be required to, we should take this out of the special inspections. And so I was wondering, and I haven't got a response from nobody. I've been told to send emails to this email site, and it doesn't seem to get anywhere. So I'm sort of flustered. I don't know what to do here. We have a letter. It's obvious this building is not a soft story building. And so who do I talk to?
Why don't you forward me that email, Matt or Henry, and I'll get it to the right people. Sorry for the delay, but we'll sort it out. If you can forward it to me tonight, I'll take care of it tomorrow morning.
Oh, and then one other thing is, we're told with special inspections that it takes 10 days. And I'm just wondering, why is it taking so long to get a special inspection recorded? Surely, are you getting that many of them that you can't handle it? And I know those folks, that were good at it. And again, but we're told, no, go to this email. So we send an email, then nothing happens. Now, and you have no idea, what's going on. So, can you fill me?
Well, okay, I hate to hear that. We are striving to deal with all the special inspection submittals and all the Title 24 submittals within 24 days. Let me talk to the staff to see where we're actually at with that. I thought we were fairly caught up, but let me follow up.
But is it possible to, when as soon as you get one of these special inspections, that you respond right away and say, received, we should have it processed within so many days? It's just that, like I said, we have one project now, we're told it's within 10 days. The properties they're trying to get, listed and sold and all that, and being held up because they can't get a special inspection cleared.
Yeah, I understand, Henry. We get hundreds of these every week, and our staff is working, 8 hours a day on these and to try to catch up. And I'm sorry we're falling a little behind, but we're doing our best to catch up there.
Matt, I'm just asking, is there any way we can get at least a response to each time somebody sends in, just to even automatic response, we receive it, so we have it? Because like this one,
you do get an automatic response when you email it in.
Okay, I just didn't see it.
You get an automatic response saying thank you for your submission. It should be dealt with in 10 days, and then we're going to actually update that automatic response. It's going to have the requirement for this attestation on it as well.
Okay.
But you should, every time you email even a question, you should get an auto response.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just one of those things that happen. No worries. Thanks, Matt.
Thank you, Henry. Why don't you forward me that email? I'll take a look.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you, Henry. Thank you, Matt. Rosanna, is your question related to the special inspections attestation?
Rosanna, did you have a question about the special inspections attestation? Okay, looks like we can't hear you, so we'll just circle back with your question later on in the forum.
Thank you. Now we're going to move on to a presentation by our technical services manager, Janie Chan, who's going to speak on the new emergency escape and rescue openings requirement.
Thank you, Patrick. Do you have the slides? My name is Janie Chan, Manager of Technical Services, and I'm here to present on the latest information sheet, EG02, that has to do with emergency escape and rescue openings. And as a background, many of you know that according to California Building Code Section 1031, there's a requirement that emergency escape and rescue openings, also known as EEROs, need to open directly to a public way or a yard or court that opens to a public way. And in December 2018, the California State Fire Marshal issued a code interpretation that EROs in residential buildings need to be accessible by emergency rescue personnel using ground ladders. And so, next slide, please. We understand that in San Francisco, buildings here do face challenges in meeting this EERO requirement, in that a lot of times EROs are facing the rear yard, and buildings tend to span from property line to property line, not allowing that access to the public way from the EROs. So as you can see in plan number 1 here to the left, ERO is in the rear, the public way is in the front. And most of California looks like plan 1, right? Where there are side yards, direct access to the rear. In plan number 2 on the right, you can see that that's representative of many San Francisco properties where the building spans the entire width and does not have a side yard. So this information sheet is put together to allow some alternatives that fire department, building department, and planning department has agreed upon to provide ministerial approval. You can go to the next slide, please. So EG02 clarifies these local equivalencies we're calling that may be requested by the applicant to meet the EERO intent. And where, like I said, there's not direct access to the public way. And EG02 does apply to R3 occupancy buildings and should allow for a more swift approval. Next slide, please. This requirement, or these requirements, do still require a local design equivalency approval. It requires that the applicant make that request, propose the solution on their drawings, and it will be reviewed by a plan reviewer and approved by a supervisor or manager of building department and the fire department. And the idea is that the requirement meets both escape and rescue. Both of these requirements need to be met. And the overview, there's an overview here, and I'll go into each one of these in more detail. Escape requires that the rear yard has a minimum of 25 feet clear. And I'll go into a more detailed depiction of that later. And then the rescue criteria, there are 3 alternatives that the designer may propose, and they can propose a 4th one if they like, if they can prove that it meets the objectives, right? And so the first one that is we discussed already between the fire department and the building department is to provide ground ladder access, and that is to provide for a pathway, a straight 3-foot wide pathway for a 22-foot straight ladder to get to the rear yard. The second alternative is to provide for roof access. This is to provide a way for rescue personnel to reach the EROs by going over the roof. And the third one is similar, but it allows for yard access, stairs from the rear yard up to a landing to access the EROs. Next slide, please. Here, going back to the escape criteria, remember that both escape and rescue criteria must be met. So the first is escape. The minimum 25-foot rear yard allows for the residents to escape from their building and shelter 25 feet away from the fire. And that 25 feet is measured from the most remote point on the lot to any portion of the building, including any projections, as you can see here on the depicted on these two graphics here. So if there are any balconies or decks, that 25-foot requirement would be measured from the rear property line to the edge of the deck or the balcony. Next slide, please. And on with the rescue criteria. There are three alternatives. The first one is to provide for ladder access, ground ladder access, and to demonstrate a pathway that's 3 feet wide minimum for a 22-foot straight ladder to go directly to the rear. And the ladder has to be brought in, be able to be brought in to the rear without having to be maneuvered around obstructions or to be swiveled into place. The ladder is heavy, or I'm told by the fire department, and it's just not reasonable to expect that rescue personnel perform special tricks during an emergency rescue operation to get the ladder into place. And so in other words, the ladder must be able to be brought in, laid down on the ground, and lifted up into place as shown in the elevation view graphic on the screen to the left here. So brought in and lifted up into place to the ERO so that rescue personnel may reach the ERO with this ground ladder. Next slide, please. So alternatives 2 and 3 of the rescue criteria have to do with providing stairs with 3-foot landings, eliminating the need for a ladder to navigate through the building and up to the or down to the EROs. They are to provide roof access so that rescue personnel would be able to access the rear yard by traveling over the roof and down an approved set of stairs to a landing to access all of the EROs. As shown in the graphic to the left, the green box represents that stair element, which can be accessed over the roof and down into the ERO. I'd like to point out, actually, there is an error in this graphic in that the 25-foot distance that still needs to be maintained for escape is measured from the rear property line to the edge of the green stair element rather than to the building in this scenario. Okay, yeah, and so the third alternative is similar. However, it is providing for access to the ERO from the yard, from the ground. So if you look at the graphic to the right, rescue personnel would determine a way to travel through the building or into the yard somehow. And this would eliminate, you know, the pathway that needs to be straight and accommodate a 22-foot ground ladder, as long as a stairway is provided up to the ERO from the ground. And so rescue personnel would use the stairs to a landing that has access to all of the EROs. Landings are required to be 3 feet. This is, as noted in the information sheet, needs to be a minimum. There's a minimum and a maximum because the fire department is requiring a 3-foot minimum landing to adequately provide for rescue personnel to reach and perform rescue operations from the ERO. And planning has agreed to a carve out to the planning code to not require neighborhood notifications as long as the landing is no more than 3 feet. So that's why the minimum maximum is emphasized in the information sheet. And in addition to that, spiral stairs are not acceptable. These need to be stairs that the fire department can be comfortable with performing their rescue operations. I've said a lot so far. Are there any questions? So this information sheet is up on the website. And like I said, the building department, the fire department, and the planning department have worked hard to make these local equivalencies available for ministerial approval. And we hope that, you know, it provides for a clear path, clear solutions to the issue of emergency escape and rescue openings not having that direct access to the public way. Happy to take any questions right now.
Yeah, thank you, Janie. We're now opening it up to questions related to emergency escape and rescue openings only. So if you have a question, dial #3 and please start your question by introducing yourself and saying your name and organization. First is Serena Calhoun.
There. I'm a local architect. I'm so grateful that this is coming out. I know we've been doing a lot of case by case on these. The questions that I have are, would we no longer need to do the sort of pre-app to go through these on a case by case basis first? And then second, would a fire escape be allowed in lieu of the stairs? I know just in terms of constructability and also dealing with planning, I'm curious if that would be considered an acceptable alternative.
I'll answer the first question, and Kathy, if you'd like to answer my second about the ladder. We would still require request for local equivalency approval through an AB 005. Unless there's anything deviating from what's been already discussed and agreed upon between the departments in the information sheet, I don't think that a pre-application meeting it would be necessary. That's the whole reason for the information sheet, is to provide clear direction, clear guidance. And so,
Great.
Yeah.
Great.
So, in regards to the fire escape, no, we would not accept fire escape. We don't approve those to be installed anymore. So we need a stairway that complies with chapter 10.
And in cases where the rear yard is maybe not 25 feet, or you can't kind of leverage up that ladder, the 22-foot ladder, would you still then in those cases require a tradesman alley instead of being able to kind of come through the unit? Like if the rear yard is less than 25 feet, how do we handle these?
So that's a question for DBI.
Yes, so if the rear yard is doesn't achieve the 25-foot minimum, and then that is outside the scope of EGO2. Direct access to the public way would have to be provided. As
direct access via a tradesman alley, that as is probably there now, would be acceptable. Like the existing access to the rear yard would be allowed to continue, I guess is what I'm asking.
Yeah, that would be, yeah.
Okay.
In this case, you have something that's similar to a side yard where there is a pathway to and fro the backyard and the public way.
Great, thank you so much.
Kathy, did you have something to add to that?
No, I mean, if you're adding a new bedroom with emergency rescue opening, you need to comply with current code. It's not existing conditions. That would be approved automatically. That's all I have.
Okay.
I just want to underscore EGO2 is there to just provide a prescriptive ministerial approval on three very definite scenarios, right? JD talked about those. If you don't meet those three prescriptive ministerial means of approving it, then we're out of the realm of EGO2 and this this easy way out. And a negotiation starts, or a conversation happens between building, fire, and the design professionals to see what can you give us, to make this happen. And it could be, Serena, that we could say no. At the end of the day, there's not enough mitigation of the hazards involved. But I don't want to say that we will shut the door. We're always open to equivalencies.
Great. Thanks, everyone. Next question is from Jared. Jared, you're up.
Hi, my name is Jared. Thank you for this information. I think I heard that these stairways being added to the backs of the buildings would not require a 311 notification. Are these stairs also allowed then to protrude into like the required yards set in the planning code?
So, yeah, we are working with the planning department. Obviously, this was just released, and the zoning administrator is there's an active carve out for these projections into required yards for public safety reasons, which is the reason why when you read EGO2, it talks about the stairway projection, the width and the landing being a minimum maximum, right? There's a minimum for fire life safety and to facilitate rescue, and there's a maximum from a planning perspective. Anything more than that is now determined to be, discretionary and therefore subject to 311.
Excellent. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Jared. Next, we have a question from Camille. Oh, sorry. Liz, did you want to go?
Yeah, I was just going to add on to that. I just heard back from the zoning administrator too, and I believe he will be issuing a formal planning code interpretation next week, so that you guys have that reference for the planning portion in writing in the planning code. So again, Corey said that will be getting issued likely next week, so that it can align with the issuance of the EGO2. So.
Thanks, Liz. All right, next we have a question from David Penn.
Hi, thank you. Yes, I don't really have any questions on the new EGO2 itself. David Penn from GBA. I just had a question on the applicability. So per my understanding of previous interpretation and application of this EGO2 was around new sleeping rooms in a rear yard. But if there is an existing sleeping room in a rear yard, the ERO applicability does not come into play. Is that correct?
Well, projects are subjected to review for compliance with the ERO requirements whenever the proposed scope restricts access for emergency escape or rescue personnel to perform the rescue operations. So if your project involves a scope that affects the existing EROs, then we'll need to look at that.
Got it. Yeah, I'm thinking of like an interior renovation to a home that has sleeping rooms in the rear, and those rooms are not changing. They're remaining as is, but other parts of the building are being renovated.
So what we'll look to see if you're making the situation more hazardous. So if we had access to emergency rescue openings on the second floor, you build out the ground floor level, and we lose that access, that's going to be an issue. If we never had access to emergency rescue openings prior to your work, then we're not going to require it, as long as you're not. We will not require it to the existing bedrooms.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, no, that's eminently reasonable. That I think that answers my question. Thank you, Chief Harold.
Great, thank you. Next in line is Camille Shi.
I have a question regarding the straight 3-foot wide pathway. Up until this point, we've been relying on moving through the garage door. And with regard to obstructions, not considering whether or not there might be a car in the garage. At the moment, there's ladder access needed. So could you comment on, I understand how it needs to be straight and aligned through the unit without obstructions, but could you comment on the garage piece?
So when we review the plans, we're looking at 3-foot clear with the construction of the building. We're not looking at a vehicle being in the garage. We'll work around that.
Wait, does that mean the pathway needs to be separate from the garage, or it's okay if for you to move through the garage, for the fire department to go through the garage.
So we can move through the garage. We're gonna, in determining whether we have the 3-foot pathway, we're gonna look at walls and door widths.
Got it. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, Camille. Does anyone have any more questions related to this topic? Okay, looks like we can move on to the next one.
Great. Well, that's the conclusion of our presentations. Are there any general questions or any questions from the previous presentations that a person didn't get a chance to ask? Now's the time.
All right, looks like we have a question from Amanda.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, hi. So I'm Amanda from Sutra Architects. I have a question not related to any of the topics discussed today. Separate topic regarding the recent planning code changes that got implemented earlier this month on the 14th with regard to constraint reductions. I was wondering, I understand that there's a summary that has been released that kind of summarizes all these changes, and that's been great, but I know that there's just still some open-ended questions regarding some of the 311 changes, and I was wondering if, you know, anyone in the planning department or maybe the zoning administrator is going to help clarify some of the changes. For example, I understand that 311 notification is not required for if you have a building that's you're expanding square footage no more than 3,000 square feet or no more than 25% more than the current gross square footage. And I've heard from like different planners who I've spoke with and they've given me sort of different answers. So I just want to know if there's going to be kind of like a clarification issue to answer these questions.
Sure. Maybe sort of short answer to the question that you had. I mean, I think the specific question, the code as written says 311 is not required if it's more than 3,000 square feet or a 25% increase of the existing building size, whichever is greater. So hopefully that should just be clear. If you know, if the existing building, okay.
Oh, there's other circumstances. So for example, like if you have an existing building that's, you know, more than 3,000 square feet, but you're only adding maybe 10% more square footage, does that still require 311 notice?
No, because that's less than a 25% addition of the existing building. So the 25% can get you to a bigger number because it says again, whichever is greater, either greater of 3,000 square feet or the greater of 25% of the existing square footage of the building. So I think for that issue, it's fairly clear. However, yes, the zoning administrator is going to be issuing a bunch of interpretations. You know, I don't think we know all of the issues yet, but for example, there's been a question of nowhere in the ordinance did it define vertical addition, and nowhere in the planning code is vertical addition defined, but now vertical additions are sort of one thing that triggers 311, whereas horizontal additions with other caveats no longer trigger 311. And he's already drafted up that interpretation and is just circulating for final edits. So he is going to be issuing sort of a stack of initial interps that have already come up from staff. But what I would say is if there's a new issue, you know, stay on track of the zoning administrator interpretations. Those are all published on our website. So that's a good place to refer to. If they're not there, then you can do one of two things. If you have an active project that's already in and assigned to a planner, I think you can ask that planner to elevate the question to the zoning administrator. The zoning administrator has drop-in hours for staff every week to resolve questions like this. If you don't have an active project already in, you can certainly, you know, email the zoning administrator directly with a question. He does have one full-time staff that's helping him on a lot of these issues, and he is fairly responsive at you know, getting back to folks if they have questions of this nature. So those are probably the two best paths forward at this time. Or obviously you can come into the planning counter or email our planning information. We have a sort of an online public counter where people can email us questions, and we can we'll get back to you within a day or two. So those are all the different resources to get resolution.
Great. And then just one added, just extra follow-up question regarding adding square footage. So what if there's a scenario where you have like a project where a previous owner of this property did a permit where they added square footage, and now a new property owner wants to add additional square footage? but then if you add up the amount of square footage percentages, it becomes more than 25, but yet your current property owner is only adding 10%. Do you still track like 10 years back of like how much square footage has been added, or does the just most recent proposed project apply?
Off the top of my head, I do not know the answer to that question, but it is in aggregate looking back to some duration of time or completion of permits. So that's a great question just to follow up again with one of the methods that I just suggested. But I know that has come up in the constraints ordinance. It's a little more in the weeds than where I am right now.
Understood. Thank you so much for your help.
Sure.
Thank you, Amanda. David Penn, it's your time to ask a question.
Hi, yeah. I wanted to call out Deborah Lutsky and thank her and her team for the assignment of tiers and the new process around the release of building permits. We've really seen a massive impact in permitting and construction timelines as a result of that. So I want to thank you very much for you and your team. And I want to make a public appeal to you and the mayor and all powers that be that you and your staff get more staff. You know, it is just very, very obvious to us, and I think to the entire applicant pool in San Francisco, that you need more resources in order to provide the sort of plan check that's needed to move these projects forward even faster and in a more efficient manner. So I just wanted to make that point. I also had a quick question. I just had a quick question. I would love to hear anything you have to say, Deborah, but I just had a quick question for, I guess this would be for Neville Perea, and it is, does an ADU qualify as a housing project for purposes of the new state ABs 1114, et cetera, and the timelines that are required for such projects?
Yeah, I want to get Deborah to respond first. I don't know if you, okay, let me go first. Yes, ADU does qualify as a housing project. However, as you may know, ADUs have a tighter timeline than AB 1114 have. It's a running clock that's 60 days, whereas 1114 is a 30 days, 30 business days, which is 6 weeks, and it stops and starts every time you have a review cycle. So.
And just to add clarification, that's for state ADUs. Local ADUs
yeah.
would more typically, although there are local timeframes associated with that, I think for the local scenario, the AB 1114 timelines will likely be faster. But just wanted to clarify.
Yeah. Sorry, Deborah, you wanted to?
No, thank you, Neville. I'm not sure, David, if there was a question. We definitely appreciate the feedback. We could absolutely use more staff. But if you definitely have a question that I missed, please feel free to ask it again, and I'd be happy to answer any question you might have.
No, I don't think I really do have a question. It was more of a public appeal for you to get more staff and an appreciation for what you're doing to improve processes with DPW and your coordination with DBI and other agencies.
Thanks, David. Next question.
Hi, hello. Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead, Vivian.
Yeah, so I have a question regarding the separate submittal to the planning department. So it says on the site that you can submit it either two ways, via the public portal or via email. For the email submittal, are there any specific documents or information that you want to include, such as like billing contacts or scope of work?
Oh, 100%. So if you read above where it gives you the two different ways of how to submit, in that first paragraph and that whole section, it has a link to the project application form. The project application form, in addition to your typical application items like owner, applicant, point of contact. It has a whole bunch of land use data that you have to fill out, existing, proposed, how many units or how many commercial square feet, how many parking spaces, how many car share spaces, like all of that information is on that. There's also a very, very robust checklist at the back of each of those. We have different versions of our project application because we were trying to help shrink the list of the things that were needed based on the scope of work. So we tried to like format it for smaller residential projects, some commercial projects, and then a larger residential projects. So I would first go to the project application landing page on our website, figure out which project application applies to your project, and then fill out that application fully. And that will walk you through every document that's required. But absolutely, we've updated it to have a very robust, complete checklist. And our staff will be doing a completeness determination within 30 days and then a comprehensive plan check within 30 days once you file that.
Okay, yeah, I just wasn't sure if you wanted us to restate any information in the email itself or just attach the PRJ plus the plans.
No, I mean, I think just a project address is great. Saying submitting a PRJ for the property at blah, blah, blah is helpful just for tracking purposes, but just the attachment is all you need.
And then also just a second, sort of a technical issue. So I tried submitting to the public portal, but it wouldn't allow me to move past the supplemental applications portion, as I didn't check off anything because our scope of work doesn't apply and it doesn't need any of those supplemental applications. I did send an email to the technical team, so just as a note.
Thanks. Yes, we are aware of that, and hopefully that will be getting updated momentarily.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you, Vivian. Next, we have a question from Serena Calhoun.
Hi there. My question is about the Accessible Business Entry Program. I've done a few hundred entry applications for this with very little difficulty, but recently the DPW standards for review seem to have changed. Even if we're not touching the public right of way, we're being required to regrade the sidewalk to provide a level landing at the power door operator instead of just a clear area. I had a call with Kevin Jensen a little over a week ago, and he said that not only should we be regrading the sidewalk for that, but also for the just the cross slope of the general sidewalk for accessibility in general because of Title III compliance. He said the only way to get a kind of like a, DBI has a process for dealing with hardships. And in this case, the process that was explained to me by Kevin is that we have to do the plans and submit the street improvement application in order to then have it reviewed for a hardship. But that's a cost that my clients would front of like $9,000, plus maybe the cost of the work at the sidewalk. So, when I'm dealing with like a 680-foot hair salon, it's really hard for me to go to them and suggest not only are they paying me, but now they're paying $9,000 for engineering and permit fees on something that's just supposed to be helping make their entrance more accessible. So I'm wondering, and I know there have been conversations between DBI and DPW about this issue and how to handle it. And I'm just hopeful that that's kind of moving somewhere. And I would love to get an update on, what's going to be required for those.
Thank you, Serena, for that question. So we have been talking regularly, and I think that would actually be a great topic for one of these meetings here in itself. I know we don't have a lot of time today. So I would say maybe we regroup and come back to this maybe at the next session or one afterwards, because there are some questions out there that I think people would be interested to hear more on. So I do appreciate you bringing it up, and then we can have kind of a larger discussion with everyone present.
So I have 3 projects right now that are kind of stuck. I'm wondering if I can reach out to you. Maybe you can just help me figure out what we can do. Our clients do want to make improvements. They just don't want to be stuck making like major improvements for something that, initially seemed quite simple, like just installing the PDA or PDO.
Of course, please do email me, send me the information, and we'll talk further.
Thank you, Deborah. Appreciate it. Good to see you.
Of course, good to see you.
Thank you, Serena. Next, we have a question from David Penn. David, please share your question.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Thank you. Just to dovetail on, I think I misheard. I think I heard this correctly, Liz Waddy. This is directed to you. But this is regarding 311 and section B of the new constraints. If you are expanding a home that is already over 3,000 square feet, but expanding it by less than 25%, then it does not trigger notice. Did I hear that correctly?
That's how I'm reading it.
Okay, great. That's also how I was reading it. I did have one quick follow-up question. I'm sorry for Deborah. I did have a question. I just got flustered and forgot it. And it's not really a question so much as a request for your team to refer projects for outside agency review sooner, as soon as possible.
David, I believe Deborah may have had to go.
Ah,
So
fantastic.
Maybe you just
I'll
want
follow up.
to email her that question directly.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, David. Looks like we have one final question from Amanda.
I think I left my hand up. I'll put it down.
Oh, okay, thank you. Oh, one more question. Just kidding. From Bert Martinez.
Hello?
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 Hi, Bert.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Following up on the Bluebeam PDF, just a little bit more description. Are you saying that we will get a full set with plan check comments, and then we'll send back our full set back with our responses, as we are doing in Bluebeam currently?
So Bert, I don't want to add any further comment on this without, again, caucusing with the other departments and the permit center, because these are just ideas, and I'd rather not hypothesize in public here.
Okay.
Thanks.
Well, adding to what Nick had said earlier, it's very helpful on Bluebeam seeing the comments on the sheets, and it's helpful that way.
Right. Yeah. No. And if we were to change anything, we would give you the comments back on
Okay.
The document management system that we're currently using as maybe the basis for EPR 2.0 will allow us to share back those documents with you. So yes, I know that's vital to see the markups on the drawings. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, Bert. Serena Calhoun, you are next.
Yeah, I had another question. This is related to there's an ordinance under review now that Supervisor Chan introduced about subdivisions requiring a 5-foot side yard open to the sky for new developments. And the way that the language is phrased in the preamble of it is that the fire department of San Francisco has determined that a 5-foot clear path is required for, quote, operational needs. And I'm really concerned about if this does pass, are we going to see other projects impacted? Like we just went through this presentation on EGO2. You know, is that pathway to the rear yard going to have to be 5 feet now through the building? Are we looking at other amendments? Because if in fact 5 feet is an operational need instead of the standard code required 36 to 44 inches based on occupancy, I really want to understand what the fire department's review of this is and how it might impact other projects going forward, if there have been any conversations about that.
All right, really quick, I don't see this, the legislation, if it passes, affecting other projects. Typically, I mean, what we've seen in the city before we started doing lot splits with SB9 was that our access was the whole front of the building. So now with SB9, splitting lots behind other lots, we need to determine what was the minimum access we needed to a building. So this was a new challenge for us, something for us to come up with, and through doing drills with our field inspectors, 5 feet was the minimum to access a building. So I don't see this affecting the EGO2. We have access to the buildings from the street side. Does that answer your question?
I think so. I'm really, the legislation is it's written for any kind of subdivision, right? So even if you have a 25-foot by, like I have a project right now, it's a 75-foot by 100-foot lot. We're going to divide it into 25-foot sections, just like a standard San Francisco lot. The building fronts onto the public right of way, and then there's a tradesman corridor of 3 feet that's clear, and it's new construction, so it's sprinklered and there's no utility meters in it. to the backyard. So there's a direct path of travel for the ladder. But even my project with this subdivision would still be subject to this 5-foot open to the sky requirement. And we'd lose, you know, a little over like about 1,100 square feet of buildable area for every single parcel. So what I'm hearing you say is the concern is related specifically to SB 9, and it's about having a lot in the back, like a flagship kind of lot where there's like a narrow maybe frontage at the street and then buildings in the rear. Is that kind of where the impetus for this legislation came from?
So it came about because we need access to buildings to be able to fight fires. It's just not that we need to get a ladder to a building to fight a fire, rescue people, or run medical calls. So what we've seen in the city is our access has been from the street, public way, and proposals are changing that are limiting that access where we don't have it from the street. So that's where the 5 feet's coming from. And we'll be applying that to, yeah, our access to any building. So any project you're working on where you have a building, we're going to be looking for a minimum 5 feet access to it.
Great.
Okay.
Does it answer?
I'm not totally clear on the difference if the building in front's onto the public right of way, just like what we looked in the EGO2, you know, diagrams. I guess I'm not understanding where the 5 feet is different than just the tradesman alley, like the 3-foot clear tradesman route.
Okay. So if we pull our rig up and the house is right in front of us, that's our access.
Right.
We don't need 5 feet to all sides of the building.
Right.
We can ladder from the street. We just need to be able to access a building.
Right. So your condition is really that there is a separate building in the backyard that doesn't come out to the public right of way, and it's on its own parcel. Is that the condition?
So yeah, any building behind a building, we need to be able to access it.
Got it. Okay. So it's
Whether
specific
it's
to
on a
like a
separate
rear
lot or
yard
not.
building. Got it. Okay, perfect. That helps because the legislation doesn't state any of that. It's just blanketly, you're doing a subdivision, there's a 5-foot side yard now.
And Serena, to add to that, EGO2 speaks to emergency escape and rescue
Right.
as differentiated from access.
From building access. Okay, perfect. That's super helpful. Thanks, you guys. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Serena. We have one more question from Michael. Michael, please share your question. Hello?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
My question goes to the EG002 and the 25-foot requirement. What happens if there's a detached ADU in a portion of that 25 feet? The detached ADU still has, you know, the 5-foot setbacks around the sides, but is there an exception for that sort of obstruction regarding EG002?
So on your drawings, you would have to demonstrate that a ladder can be brought in, laid down on the ground, and lifted up into place to provide for rescue.
Yeah. So during plan review, we would make the determination if we had the space to be able to put a ladder up to the emergency rescue opening.
Okay, but I thought, I don't have the EG002 in front of me, but I thought the underlining requirement is you must first have 25 feet of rear yard before you can even get into the weeds of 002. But what happens, is it okay to have a detached ADU within that 25 feet?
No, not from what I'm hearing you say. The code requires a 50-foot shelter in place separation, right? From to be able to move to the rear away from a potential collapsing building. And EGO2 here in San Francisco reduced that to 25 feet. We're holding to that and making that the minimum requirement to facilitate escape, the escape part of the building. So if someone's escaping from the front building and all they see is another building, that's between them and the rear yard, that in that 25 feet, that potential that other building is potentially on fire as well. So that doesn't give you the escape portion of what we need here. So yes, you will, if you have a detached building within that 25 feet, that doesn't create or facilitate the escape portion of EGO2.
Okay, so if we're designing a ADU, because this is in process, then we need to make sure there's 25 feet between the ADU and the main house.
Right, and then also just to let you know, you got to look at this emergency escape and rescue from the ADU as well.
Correct, but because it's a detached in the back, it always, almost by default, it has its own 3-foot corridor, tradesman, 1-hour passageway.
To
in order to provide access to the ADU. So it's kind of a given.
Yeah, why don't you bring that in to talk with the fire department and building, because it sounds like, well, again, I don't know, I don't want to
Yeah,
hypothesize.
it sounds like if you're providing access to the rear building, then there is access from the rear EROs to the public way, and therefore EGO2 is not required. It's unnecessary. But you wouldn't have to use EGO2 to begin with because you do have access.
Yeah, I guess that's right. I guess I'll just have to do a pre-app then to be sure. Is that the best suggestion?
I wouldn't say a pre-app, just because, well, it may just be a question over the counter to one of our staff. It doesn't sound like it warrants a pre-application meeting.
That's what I'll do. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Michael. We're about 30 minutes past our time, so we are going to call this public advisory forum. If you have any remaining questions, you can email them to us at dbi.communications@sf.gov or sfgov.org. Again, dbi.communications@sfgov.org, and we'll route it to the person that can answer it. We want to thank you guys all for joining us today and thank our panelists. Our next public advisory forum is on Wednesday, April 24th, and this recording will be published onto the website tomorrow. Thanks again. Have a good night.